The Unbreakable aka the Krelnorian Empire had conquered 17 star systems in less than a galactic cycle. Their ships were vast crystalline structures that seemed to bend the very light around them, their weapons capable of reducing planets to molten slag. They were relentless, methodical, and utterly ruthless. Before humanity, no species had lasted longer than 3 orbital periods against their full might. But humans were different. Captain Maya Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant, one of the last functioning warships in the Terran Defense Fleet. Through the viewscreen, she watched as the remnants of humanity's vanguard scattered across the Nova Proxima system, pursued by the seemingly endless swarm of Krelnorian fighters. The battle had been raging for 17 hours straight. They were losing, badly. Captain, Outpost Epsilon is reporting critical shield failure. Civilian evacuation is only at 37%. Lieutenant Dawson's voice cracked with exhaustion. They're requesting immediate extraction support. Maya closed her eyes briefly. Outpost Epsilon housed over 8,000 civilians, scientists, engineers, and their families. The installation was crucial, not just for the people inside, but because it contained the quantum communications array that coordinated all of humanity's remaining defenses. The Krelnorians have deployed a blockade around the station, Tactical Officer Rivera added. 3 dreadnoughts, support craft. Attempting extraction would be suicide. The bridge fell silent. They all knew what was at stake. They all knew the odds. Maya opened her eyes, her jaw set with determination. Plot a course to Outpost Epsilon. Prepare all remaining weapon systems. Her crew exchanged glances. Commander Harris stepped forward. Captain, with all due respect, we can't break that blockade. The Defiant is already operating on emergency power. Our shields won't hold against a single volley from those dreadnoughts. Maya turned to face her executive officer, her expression calm but resolute. I know. Then how? I'll handle it. 3 simple words. But the way she said them, quiet, assured, almost casual, changed the atmosphere on the bridge instantly. Her crews straightened in their stations, a newfound energy flowing through them. Harris studied her face, looking for doubt, and finding none. He nodded once. Yes, Captain. The Defiant surged forward, its damaged engines screaming in protest as Maya pushed them beyond emergency capacity. She knew the ship was dying, but she only needed it to hold together for a little while longer. Captain, Lieutenant Rivera called out, Krelnorian command vessel is hailing us. On screen, the angular face of Admiral Krex appeared, his crystalline exoskeleton glinting under the lights of his command deck. Human vessel, your attempt to reach the outpost is futile. Stand down and surrender. I offer you the mercy of quick extinction. Maya smiled, not the reaction Krex had expected. Admiral Krex, I appreciate the offer, but I'm afraid I'm going to have to decline. You see, those are our people at that outpost, and we're going to get them out. Krex's faceted eyes narrowed. You cannot break our blockade with a single damaged vessel. Watch me. She cut the transmission. Rivera, are the calculations complete? Yes, Captain. But it's insane. The probability of success is... I didn't ask for the odds, Lieutenant. Execute. What followed would later be described in Krelnorian military texts as the Chen maneuver, a tactic so reckless that no sane military strategist would have conceived it, let alone attempted it. Maya positioned the Defiant on a direct collision course with the central Krelnorian dreadnought, pushing the engines well beyond safety parameters. Just as the Krelnorians opened fire, the Defiant performed a series of unpredictable micro-jumps, a technique previously thought impossible so close to massive objects. Each jump lasted milliseconds, creating the illusion of a ship phasing through solid matter. The Krelnorian targeting systems, precise and methodical, couldn't compensate for the chaotic pattern. They're firing on predicted trajectories, Maya observed. Their systems can't handle true randomness. Keep the jump pattern as erratic as possible. The Defiant shuddered violently as it phased between normal space and the jump realm, systems failing throughout the ship. But Maya had calculated exactly how long the ship needed to hold together. The confusion in the Kromorian fleet was complete when the Defiant suddenly appeared inside the blockade formation, between two dreadnoughts, and launched its remaining payload, not at the enemy ships, but in a precisely calculated pattern that created a temporary corridor through the blockade. Transmit to Outpost Epsilon. Evacuation corridor open. You have 4 minutes. Go now. As the evacuation ships streamed through the momentary gap, the Kromorians scrambled to reposition. They hadn't anticipated this. Their battle doctrine had no protocol for such illogical behavior. On the Kromorian command ship, Admiral Krex watched in disbelief. What is happening? How did one ship break our formation? His second-in-command struggled to explain. The human captain. She sacrificed her vessel to create a gap. Our simulations indicated no rational commander would attempt such a maneuver. And the humans. The evacuation ships are escaping through the debris field. Our larger vessels cannot pursue effectively. Krex's crystalline appendages clicked in agitation. And the human captain. Their ship was destroyed in the final explosion. Unknown. No confirmation of destruction. Krex stared at the tactical display, unease growing within him. This wasn't the first time humans had defied expectations. Throughout the campaign, they had encountered human soldiers, pilots, and engineers who performed impossible feats when the situation seemed most hopeless. What was it she said? Krex asked quietly. Sir, the human captain, before she executed this madness. What were her words? His officer consulted the translation. I'll handle it. A human idiom, that. I know what it means, Krex interrupted. I've heard it before. He had indeed heard those words from humans on a dozen battlefields, always preceding some act of desperate ingenuity that shouldn't have worked, but somehow did. What Krex didn't know was that Captain Maya Chen was not, in fact, dead. In the final seconds before the Defiant's reactor went critical, she and a skeleton crew had transferred to a modified escape pod. As the Kromorians focused on the evacuation ships, the pod drifted, powered down, looking like just another piece of debris. Inside, Maya and her remaining crew monitored communications. Every evacuation ship had made it through. Outpost Epsilon was empty of all personnel. 8,000 civilians saved. Captain, Harris whispered in the darkness of the pod. What now? Maya smiled, though no one could see it in the darkness. Now we find another ship. We're not done yet. But the odds. Commander, have you noticed that humans are really bad at calculating odds? Or maybe we're just really good at defying them. She pulled up a star chart on the pod's emergency system. We got a long way to go, but I think I know where we can find allies. Harris shook his head, but there was admiration in his voice. You're going to handle it, aren't you? Dan right, Commander. The legend of Maya Chen spread rapidly through both human and Kromorian ranks. For the first time in their long history of conquest, the Kromorians began to experience doubt. They had always relied on overwhelming force and technological superiority. But against humans, those advantages seemed insufficient. Because when a human said, I'll handle it, something extraordinary always followed. The ILEGNDBECUMES-REALT. 2 years later, the war had transformed. What should have been a swift conquest had become a grinding stalemate. For every system the Kromorians took, the humans reclaimed another through guerrilla tactics, impossible strikes, and innovations that seemed to materialize from desperation itself. Admiral Krex had been promoted to Supreme Commander of all Kromorian forces. His mission was clear: end this conflict by any means necessary. The Kromorian High Council was becoming impatient. Resources were being diverted from other expansion fronts. The longer the war dragged on, the more the Empire's reputation suffered. The final assault on the human homeworld begins in 12 cycles. Krex announced to his war council, "We will commit 70% of our total fleet strength. His generals nodded in approval. The plan was comprehensive, accounting for every human defensive position, every potential counterattack. This time, they had prepared for human unpredictability by building multiple layers of contingencies into their attack plan. "And what of the human captain? The one called Chen?" asked General Vrax. Krex's faceted eyes glinted. "Intelligence suggests she leads the defense of their inner colonies. She will not be a factor in this battle." But Krex was wrong. Maya Chen had indeed been busy during the past 2 years, but not where the Krelnorians thought. She had been building a network, an alliance of species previously conquered by the Krelnorians, gathering intel and preparing for exactly this moment. As the massive Krelnorian armada approached Earth, humanity's defenses seemed woefully inadequate. Their fleet was positioned in standard defensive formations, their planetary shields operating at expected capacity. Everything looked exactly as the Krelnorian intelligence had predicted. Lieutenant James Foster stood on the bridge of the UES Intrepid, the newest and most advanced ship in Earth's defense fleet. At 32, he was young for his position, but the war had accelerated many careers. He watched the Krelnorian fleet emerge from faster-than-light travel, their ships forming the precise geometric patterns that characterize their battle doctrine. "They're here," Foster announced unnecessarily. Everyone could see the overwhelming force arrayed against them. All ships maintain formation, planetary defense grid standing by. The comms officer looked up, her face pale. "Sir, we're being hailed by the Krelnorian command ship." On screen, Admiral Krex appeared, his crystalline form more imposing than ever. "Human defenders, your resistance ends today. Your species has fought with admirable determination, but the outcome was never in doubt. Surrender now, and we will allow a portion of your population to live as a client species." Foster smiled, the same unsettling smile that Krex had seen on Maya Chen's face 2 years earlier. "That's a generous offer, Admiral, but I'm afraid we have other plans." Krex's mandibles clicked in irritation. "Your defenses are insufficient. Your fleet is outnumbered 10-1. What possible plan could you have?" Foster shrugged casually. "I'll handle it." Those words again. Krex felt an unfamiliar sensation, something close to fear. "You humans, and your arrogance, it changes nothing." He cut the transmission. The Krelnorian attack began precisely as planned. Their forward elements engaged the human fleet while their heavy weapons platforms moved into position to begin planetary bombardment. Everything proceeded according to their simulations, too perfectly. On the Intrepid, Foster watched the battle unfold with calculating eyes. "They've committed their reserves. They're all here." He opened a secure channel. "Captain Chen, do you copy?" Maya Chen's voice came through, clear and confident. "Loud and clear, Lieutenant. Is our friend in position?" "Yes, ma'am." "All Krelnorian forces accounted for." They took the bait. "Excellent. Commence Operation Echo." Foster nodded to his weapons officer. "Send the signal." Throughout the human fleet, ships suddenly began changing formation, but not into any recognizable battle pattern. They were positioning themselves at apparently random coordinates. On his command ship, Krex observed the movement with growing confusion. What are they doing? This formation offers no tactical advantage. Then his tactical officer noticed something alarming. "Supreme Commander, we're detecting unusual energy signatures from the asteroid belt." Before Krex could respond, space itself seemed to tear open. Hundreds of spatial rifts appeared throughout the battlefield, surrounding the Krelnorian fleet. Through these rifts came ships, not human vessels, but an assortment of craft from a dozen different species that the Krelnorians had conquered and believed subjugated. "Impossible," Krex whispered. And among them was a ship unlike any other, a massive vessel that appeared to be an amalgamation of technologies from multiple species, including Krelnorian components. On its bridge stood Maya Chen. All Allied forces, she broadcast on an open channel. Execute attack pattern Omega. Quantum inhibitors online. The newly arrived ships activated devices that sent out waves of energy unlike anything the Kromorians had encountered before. Their ships' crystalline structures, the source of their technological superiority, began to resonate at frequencies that disrupted their weapons and propulsion systems. What is happening? Krex demanded as his ship's systems began failing one by one. His science officer worked frantically at his station. They've discovered the resonant frequency of our crystalline technology. They're using it against us. Our ships are becoming inert. Krex couldn't believe what he was seeing. Throughout his fleet, ships were powering down, weapons disabled, engines offline. 2 years. The humans had spent 2 years studying Kromorian technology, finding its weakness, and building a coalition of all the species the Empire had subjugated. Maya Chen opened a direct channel to Krex's ship. "Admiral, your fleet is disabled. Your weapons are offline. I'm offering you something the Kromorians have never offered any species: genuine peace. Withdraw from all occupied territories, recognize the sovereignty of all sentient species, and we can end this war today." Krex stared at the human captain, understanding finally dawning on him. "This was your plan all along. Even that day at Outpost Epsilon, you weren't just saving civilians." Maya nodded. "The quantum communications array wasn't just for coordination. It contained detailed scans of your ship's crystalline structure. We needed that data to develop the inhibitor technology. Everything since then has been building toward this moment. You sacrificed your ship, risked your life, for data. To save my people. To free all the species you've enslaved." Without hesitation, Krex looked around at his disabled fleet, at the coalition of former enemies, now united against the Empire. For the first time in Kromorian history, they faced not just defeat, but extinction. "And if I refuse your terms?" Maya's expression hardened slightly. "Then we'll handle it another way. The inhibitor technology doesn't just disable your ships, Admiral. At higher frequencies, it can shatter crystalline structures entirely, including the exoskeletons of Kromorian soldiers." The implication was clear: total destruction. In that moment, Admiral Krex, Supreme Commander of the Kromorian Empire, made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. "I accept your terms, Captain Chen." The war ended not with the annihilation of either species, but with words: a peace treaty that recognized the sovereignty of all sentient beings and established new protocols for interstellar relations. As the Kromorian ships withdrew from Earth orbit, Lieutenant Foster joined Maya on the observation deck of her new flagship. "How did you know it would work?" he asked. "The inhibitor technology, the coalition, all of it was such a long shot." Maya smiled. "I didn't know. Not for certain. But that's the thing about humans, James. We don't need certainty. We just need a chance, however small." Foster nodded. "And when a human says, 'I'll handle it,' the impossible becomes possible," Maya finished. "That's what the Kromorians never understood. They saw our determination as irrational, our hope as delusion. They couldn't grasp that humans are at their most dangerous when the situation seems most hopeless." Across the galaxy, the story spread of how humans had defeated the undefeatable Kromorian Empire, of how a single captain's defiant "I'll handle it" had sparked a revolution that changed the power structure of an entire galaxy. And on worlds throughout former Kromorian territory, a new phrase entered local languages, borrowed from humanity but universally understood: "I'll handle it." Not just words, but a promise. A declaration that no matter how dire the circumstances, there is always hope, always a path forward, always a way to defy the impossible. Because when humans say, "I'll handle it," the battle is already won.